Alright, this video will show how to use MySQL database with Wago PLC. We're using a package called XAMPP, so go ahead and click on PHP MyAdmin, and we're going to create a new database. We're going to call it WagoDB, then click Create, and we're going to create a table called Data with 3 fields. First field will be called Timestamp, and we want to make sure we select the default value for that to be the current time, as shown here. Second field will be called ID tag, and it's an integer with a length of 11. The next one is ID value, also an integer with the same length. And then go and click Go, and then click Save. Do need to create a new user now, so click on the Privileges tab and select Add New User. We'll create a user called Wago with a password of lowercase password. Type it in again. We want to select the Select, Insert, Update, Delete fields and click Go. And if you go back to our SQL Reload Privileges, that flushes it and you'll see the new user created there. Alright, so now we'll create our PLC program for 750-881, and we'll make that a ladder diagram for the PLC PRG. And we're going to insert our library under the library manager, and it's called Wago lib MySQL _03. And let's take a quick look at it. You can see we're going to be using the login, logout, and execute function blocks there. And for the login, basically you're just going to put the parameters for that database, the password username that we created earlier. The execute, we're passing a SQL statement in a string format, and there's some other parameters there. And then under the global variables, you'll see some constants defined here that are used in our declarations. Just want to make aware that this is where they're located. Now if we go to the PLC PRG, I've actually already created a lot of the variables needed for this here, so I'm just going to paste these in here and show you what you'll need. So you do need a MySQL context function block. It's just used in your SQL blocks. And then this section up here is where the variables are used for the connection to the database. You can see here your username, password, the DB name, the table name, that kind of thing. Next part here is where we're actually going to make our connection to the block, and then a disconnect at the bottom there. Alright, so we'll go ahead and start adding our ladder diagram here. I'm going to insert a box with enable, and I'm going to put in the MySQL login name here, and then I'm just going to cut and paste the fields that are required for this block here. And I'll just do this really fast. Now we're going to create a function which returns a string, and we're going to call that a SQL statement. And this is going to format the string that we're going to pass to our SQL. I've actually already created this. I'm just going to cut and paste the variables and the structured text and explain what it does here. So you can see here we've got the input parameters of the table, the ID, and the value, all to match what the database is looking for. And then we also have a string that we're going to be doing some formatting, concatenating on. So here we're going to go back to our PLC PRG and add a box with enable and call the SQL statement function that we just created. And then I'm going to tag that with the table name, the ID tag, and the ID value. And I'm going to return that into our SQL statement, the first array of that block. Then we'll add our Microsoft SQL execute block, and I'm just going to cut and paste those parameters for that block. And then our next block is going to be the logout block, and I'm going to tag those as well. So this is what our ladder looks like. It's 4 rungs. We've got our login, our SQL statement formatting block that we made, and our execute block, and our logout block. So what would really help here is if we can have a visualization to actually monitor and control our PLC. So to do that, we're just going to go to the target visualizations and enable web visualizations. And I've actually already created a visualization. I'm just going to import it here. I actually have a separate video that shows how to do this. Essentially, you've got some fields that will be displayed on your web page, and you can set the color of the objects. You can display your variables and allow for input. This one is the connect button. This is the disconnect button. And this is our execute button for the SQL execute. And these are the values that we can monitor for or modify for different PLCs. I'm just going to download this now to our PLC. I'm going to run the project. Here you can see it's populated the variables that we have in our project. And if you remember, in our database, we have these different fields here, the ID, tag, and value. And that's the SQL statement that the query did. You can see there's no data in this database yet. So now I'm going to connect the database. It does report that it's connected. I'm going to hit the execute button, and that's this button field here. It's going to actually send our SQL statement into our MySQL database, and this is what is actually in that string, which is what our function formatted for us. So going back to execute a couple more times here, you can see I'm going to take a look at what's in the data, and there you can see that data point that we just entered. I'm going to change the ID value to something different, and then go back, write the values out, click the execute button, and refresh that, and you can see the new data field there. So we know that it is working right. So one last thing we can do is just open up a web browser and direct it to our PLC, and then go to the web visualization, and that will deploy the Java client and allow us to basically view the same thing that we saw within CoDeSys, where we can connect and disconnect and execute and control our project from within a web browser. The Wago MySQL library can be downloaded for free at wago.com. Thank you.